All right, I need you to just picture this. It was a chilling October night in 1993, and the cold air hung heavy over the small, peaceful suburban town of Fairview, a place that had never known serious crime. Everything changed dramatically that morning when the family realized that Mai Linh, a diligent and vibrant 16-year-old high school student, hadn't returned home after a study group. Her bicycle was found abandoned a few blocks from her house, leaning against the sidewalk. Everything else, a chilling emptiness. When the police arrived at the scene, the initial worry quickly escalated into full-blown panic. There were no obvious signs of a struggle, no ransom note, no message, or any clear clue as to where Mai Linh had gone. Only a small hair clip belonging to her lay among the dry leaves on the roadside, a short distance from her bike. It seemed to be the only piece of evidence suggesting Mai Linh had been there, and then simply vanished without a trace. Forensic experts meticulously searched the area, collecting anything suspicious. A few strands of hair clinging to the clip, a tiny stain on the sidewalk they suspected was blood, and even faint shoe prints on the soft ground. But at that time, DNA analysis technology was very rudimentary. Tiny samples like these were virtually useless. The initial investigation was launched vigorously. Hundreds of people were interviewed: friends, teachers, neighbors, anyone who had interacted with Mai Linh. Police scoured every forest and river within dozens of kilometers. Files of local suspects were meticulously reviewed, but every lead quickly dissolved into a dead end. There were no reliable witnesses, no clear motive, no suspect solid enough for an arrest. Mai Linh's case rapidly became an unsolved mystery, a haunting presence that plagued Fairview. Mai Linh's disappearance sowed deep fear within the once peaceful community. Her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Tran, were plunged into unimaginable grief. Each passing day was sheer agony. They tirelessly continued their search, posting thousands of flyers, begging anyone with information to come forward. But as the years slipped by, hope slowly faded. Mai Linh's case, once the focus of intense attention, gradually slipped from media headlines, becoming a cold case in the police department's archives. Justice for her and for her family seemed to be frozen in time forever. As the frantic initial search for Mai Linh yielded no results, her case slowly, agonizingly slipped into the stagnant waters of a cold case. For Mr. and Mrs. Tran, however, there was no cold. Their pain remained raw, an open wound that refused to heal. Each morning brought the fresh realization that Mai Linh wasn't there, and each night was haunted by the unanswered questions of her disappearance. Life for the Trans became a relentless, agonizing limbo. Mai Linh's room remained exactly as she'd left it, her school books stacked on her desk, a half-finished knitting project on her bed, her favorite stuffed animal perched on the pillow. It was a shrine, a painful monument to a daughter who was gone but never truly left their thoughts. Every family meal felt incomplete, every holiday a stark reminder of her absence. While the world outside moved on, celebrating milestones, having children, growing older, the Trans were trapped in time, forever waiting for a call that never came. Despite the dwindling hope, their efforts never ceased. Mr. Tran would meticulously go through local news archives, searching for any similar cases, any detail he might have missed. Mrs. Tran joined online forums for families of missing persons, sharing Mai Linh's story, hoping a fresh pair of eyes, somewhere in the world, might notice something. They organized small community events each year on the anniversary of her disappearance, not just to remember Mai Linh, but to keep her name alive, a silent plea to the universe for answers. They funded their own private investigators when they could, always chasing whispers, always hitting walls. The hardest part was the constant torment of not knowing. Was she alive? Was she suffering? Had she been taken far away? The lack of closure was a form of psychological torture. They grappled with endless possibilities, sometimes even falling prey to far-fetched conspiracy theories that offered complex, albeit unproven explanations for Mai Linh's vanishing. Every stranger seemed like a potential suspect. Every news report of another crime, a chilling reminder of their own unsolved mystery. Years turned into decades. The physical effects of their grief began to show. The lines of sorrow etched deeper into their faces, the light in their eyes dimmed. Mai Linh's younger brother, who was just a toddler when she disappeared, grew up knowing his sister only through faded photographs and his parents' hushed, heartbroken stories. The Mai Linh case became a silent, ever-present specter in their lives, a creepy void that no amount of time could fill. They were a family living with a permanent phantom limb, forever reaching for someone who wasn't there, forever bound to a question without an answer. As the years blurred into decades, Mai Linh's case, like thousands of others across the nation, remained trapped in the archives, a file gathering dust. For Mr. and Mrs. Tran, the torment of not knowing never faded. Yet, unbeknownst to them, a quiet, profound revolution was sweeping through the world of forensic science. A revolution that would one day breathe new life into seemingly hopeless, cold cases. In the early 2000s, DNA technology, once rudimentary and requiring large, pristine samples, began its exponential ascent. Scientists developed techniques to extract and amplify DNA from incredibly tiny or degraded samples. A single hair follicle, a microscopic skin cell, even minute blood stains that were once considered useless. This was a game changer. But the true paradigm shift came with the advent of forensic genealogical DNA in the late 2010s. This groundbreaking method didn't just match DNA to a known suspect. It leveraged publicly available genetic databases, the same ones used by millions of people to trace their ancestry. By uploading an unknown suspect's DNA profile to these databases, investigators could find distant relatives, a second cousin, a great aunt, a third cousin twice removed, who had voluntarily submitted their DNA for family history research. This allowed them to construct intricate family trees, narrowing down the potential suspect pool from millions to a handful of individuals who shared common ancestors with the DNA found at the crime scene. It was like finding a needle in a haystack, then handing you a map to where its family lived. For agencies dealing with a mountain of unsolved mysteries, this was nothing short of a miracle. In 2020, inspired by successful high-profile cold case resolutions using this new method, a dedicated task force was established to revisit some of the most baffling cases in Fairview's history. Among them was the haunting disappearance of Mai Linh. The original evidence from 1993, the hair strands from the clip, the tiny suspected blood stain, the faint shoe print casts, had been meticulously preserved, even if their potential wasn't fully understood at the time. These meager, almost invisible remnants of a terrifying night were now retrieved from deep storage. The very samples once deemed insufficient were carefully sent to a specialized private lab, equipped with the cutting-edge technology capable of unlocking their secrets. As the scientists began their delicate work, the anticipation was palpable. Could these microscopic fragments of the past truly speak after so many years of silence? Could the ghosts hidden within these molecules finally reveal the truth of Mai Linh's fate and identify the person responsible? The hope, once a faint flicker, now burned brighter, promising to finally pierce the decades of darkness surrounding Fairview's most agonizing cold case. The agonizing wait for Mai Linh's family and the tireless efforts of the police force for over 2 decades culminated in a sterile laboratory. The old, seemingly invaluable samples from 1993, a few strands of hair, a tiny stain, were now being processed with the most advanced genealogical DNA analysis technology. With each passing hour, hope mingled with extreme tension. Finally, the results came in. The DNA profile obtained from the hair strands and the stain was uploaded to public genealogical databases, scanning through millions of voluntarily submitted personal profiles. After days of complex analysis, the scientists found a few connections. Not direct matches, but distant relatives of the suspect. A third cousin living in California, an uncle in Oregon. From these genetic fragments, forensic DNA investigators meticulously began to build a family tree, going back decades, searching for a common ancestor, and then descending through other branches to identify individuals who matched the DNA profile and the old clues from the case. After weeks of painstaking work, a name began to emerge, Van Hung, fictional name, a 50-year-old man living quietly in a town about 2 hours' drive from Fairview. What was astonishing was that Van Hung had been briefly interviewed during the initial investigation in 1993. He was a maintenance worker at Mai Linh's school at the time. He was present in Fairview, had access to the area where Mai Linh disappeared, but had no prior criminal record and a mild demeanor, so he was quickly ruled out as a primary suspect. The truth that the perpetrator had lived freely and calmly near the victim's home for all those years, without anyone knowing, sent shivers down everyone's spines. This was the most strange, dark, and mysterious aspect of the case. The cold case team immediately sprang into action. They secretly collected a DNA sample from Van Hung from a personal item he publicly discarded. The subsequent analysis perfectly matched the DNA found at Mai Lin's crime scene. The concrete evidence was established. Justice was no longer hidden. On a quiet morning, as Van Hung was heading to work as usual, he was arrested. He offered no resistance, his face maintaining an eerily calm expression. The news spread like an earthquake. Mr. and Mrs. Tran, who had waited resiliently for nearly 30 years, wept uncontrollably upon hearing the news. Finally, their pain was partially alleviated by the answer. The Fairview community was stunned, mixed with relief and horror, knowing that the monster had lived among them for decades. The moment justice was served had arrived, but it also raised disturbing questions. What did Van Hung do to Mai Lin? How did he live such a normal life all those years with that dark secret? This was a truly haunting true story of how the ghost in the DNA finally revealed itself, uncovering a creepy truth more terrifying than any imagination. The arrest of Van Hung brought an end to nearly 3 decades of agonizing uncertainty for Mai Lin's family. The courtroom, often a place of cold procedure, became the stage for a deeply emotional reckoning. Van Hung, who maintained his eerie composure even during the trial, was ultimately convicted, largely thanks to the irrefutable DNA evidence. The verdict, delivered to a packed courtroom, brought waves of relief and tears to Mr. and Mrs. Tran. Justice, though long delayed, had finally been served. For Mai Lin's parents, the closure was profound. While the pain of losing their daughter would never fully disappear, the constant gnawing question of what happened was finally answered. They could now grieve with the certainty of knowing her fate and the satisfaction that her tormentor was behind bars. The unsolved mystery that had consumed their lives for so long had found its resolution, bringing a measure of peace they hadn't known in decades. This case, like so many others reopened by genetic genealogy, underscored the revolutionary power of DNA technology. It proved that even the most meticulous criminals, who leave behind only microscopic traces, cannot escape the relentless march of scientific progress. The ghosts in the DNA speak for the silent victims, ensuring that no crime is truly beyond reach, no matter how much time passes. This advancement has fundamentally reshaped how cold cases are approached, giving new hope to thousands of families who had long given up. However, the resolution also left its own set of scars. The chilling realization that Van Hung, a seemingly ordinary maintenance worker, had lived among them for decades, a wolf in sheep's clothing, sent shivers through the Fairview community. It ignited debates about privacy in genetic databases and the ethics of using family DNA to identify suspects. While the desire for justice often outweighed these concerns, they highlighted the complex societal implications of such powerful new tools. The strange, dark, and mysterious nature of the perpetrator's long-hidden life left a lasting unease. Ultimately, Mai Lin's case became a powerful true story about resilience, scientific ingenuity, and the unyielding pursuit of justice. It stands as a testament that hope should never be abandoned, even in the bleakest of circumstances. While the healing process would be long for the Tran family, the resolution of Mai Lin's cold case sent a clear, undeniable message to criminals hiding in plain sight. Time may pass, but the echoes embedded in your DNA will eventually betray you, ensuring that the mystery of your crime will one day be solved, no matter how creepy the truth may be.